still hear it when I close my eyes. Not in dreams. I don't sleep long enough for that anymore. It's when the house is quiet and I'm just about to drift off. That's when I hear the breathing, deep, shallow, uneven, like something trying to stay quiet but forgetting how lungs are supposed to work. It's not in the house, I know that. It's under it, or near it, or maybe it's still inside me. I don't know. I haven't told anyone about this until now, but I figured 7:31 a.m. might understand. This wasn't supposed to be complicated. I took a seasonal ranger job up in the North District, Oregon side, near the Columbia River Gorge. I didn't grow up outdoorsy. My friends were doing internships in Portland, and I just wanted something that'd get me away for a while. The gig sounded easy. Hike some trails, check camera traps, call in dead trees or trail washouts. The pay wasn't great, but the station had heat, a decent bunk, and no cell service, which at the time sounded like a feature, not a bug. Most of my time was spent hiking the same loops. You fill out the log, sign your initials, radio in if you see bear tracks or illegal traps. That's it. The forest was dense but quiet, honest kind of work. After 2 weeks, I stopped getting jumpy at the sounds outside the tower. Deer, mostly, sometimes owls. Once or twice, a cougar, but you could always tell when it was something natural. Trail 12 wasn't on my sheet. It wasn't on the map posted in the ranger station either. Not unless you flipped the old topographic charts hanging in the file cabinet. But one morning, I was asked to check it out. I got a radio call from HQ saying a hunter had reported movement near an abandoned cabin site off Trail 12. The dispatcher didn't sound worried, just insistent. Said I was closest. I asked if anyone else had gone before. Silence. Then she said, "Just a quick pass-through. Don't need to report unless you see something." Something about her tone rubbed me the wrong way. I remember staring at the radio for a few seconds after she signed off, not sure why I suddenly felt like I was being volunteered for something no one else wanted. I packed light, just a day bag, water, radio, field notebook, and a bear whistle. Trail 12 started past the split in the Douglas fir line, where the forest gets thick enough to feel like dusk even at noon. The sign marking the entrance was barely legible, weather-worn and hanging crooked. I don't know how long it had been since someone last walked it. There were no fresh boot prints. The trail was soft and overgrown. It didn't feel used. Hell, it didn't feel meant to be walked. The deeper I went, the more it felt like the forest was pressing inward. The light thinned out until it was just a dim green wash filtering through pine needles. Every sound felt distant, not muffled exactly, just like it had to travel farther than it should. I remember stopping once, thinking I heard water, a soft trickle, maybe a stream. But when I listened closely, it wasn't water, it was breathing, not mine, rhythmic, shallow, then gone. I shook it off, told myself it was wind, slipping through the canopy in some weird way. That kind of thing happens out here, or at least that's what I kept telling myself. About an hour in, I found the old cabin foundation. There wasn't much left, just a concrete pad half swallowed by moss, the rusted outline of a stove, and the frame of what might have been a back wall. I logged the location and walked the perimeter. No fresh prints, no trash, no sign of camping. But something didn't sit right. The air around the site was heavier. Still, like everything had been holding its breath for a long time, and I just reminded it how. I didn't want to stay long, but daylight was fading fast, and the hike back would have meant bushwhacking in the dark. Not smart, not safe. So I made camp on the edge of the clearing and radioed in my location. That's when the static started. It was faint at first, just enough to make me think the antenna was loose. Then it grew louder, not constant, pulsing, like the signal was being dragged through something thick. I tried switching frequencies. Nothing. I turned it off, waited, turned it back on. Dead air. It was only later, when I rolled over in my sleeping bag, that I realized the static was still coming from somewhere. But it wasn't the radio. It was outside the tent. The next few hours come back in fragments, crunching leaves, a single thump near the fire pit, something brushing the side of the tent just once. gently, like a fingertip tracing the curve of the fabric. I didn't unzip the flap. I didn't breathe. I just lay there, counting every second until the sky lightened. The silence was total, not peaceful, hollow. Like something had taken the sound. Like I'd missed some signal to run. When I finally stepped out at dawn, the air had that wrong kind of chill, the one that sinks into your bones even though the sun's up. My gear was undisturbed. Fire burned low, but above me, hanging from a branch not 10 feet up, was a crow, stripped clean, legs bound with old fishing line. No blood, no scavenger damage, just bone and black feathers swaying gently in the wind. I didn't eat, didn't pack up, just stood there under that bird, waiting for my brain to catch up. I hadn't brought rope, I didn't have fishing line. There were no drag marks, no blood spatter, no smell of death. Whatever had done that, had done it clean and close. I kept looking up at the tree line, half expecting to see someone watching, but the woods were still, not peaceful, just waiting. I snapped out of it and started moving. I wasn't thinking clearly, just reacting. Breaking camp, grabbing my bag, snuffing the fire with my boot. I marked the direction back to the fork with a quick slash on a nearby tree. A little crooked X with my knife. Standard trail exit. I walked fast, checked my compass, stuck to the slope. 10 minutes later, I passed the same tree again. Same split trunk. Same crooked X. I stopped, thinking maybe I'd misjudged the direction. Doubled back somehow. I adjusted. Walked the other way. Slower this time, counting my steps, paying attention to roots and broken branches. 15 minutes. Same tree. Same mark. I checked my compass again. North kept spinning. I shook it. It stabilized. I moved again. Same tree. By the third time I passed it, I couldn't pretend anymore. Something wasn't adding up. The trail wasn't looping. The forest was. Or I was. My legs started to shake. I opened the radio and clicked it on, hoping to hear static. Anything. But what came through wasn't static. It was my voice. Not exactly. It was off. Slower. Warped. Like someone dragging my words through a thick, wet filter. I couldn't tell what I'd said at first, and just garbled syllables, whispered and broken up. Then the phrase repeated. "Don't look at it!" That's all. My voice saying that, over and over. "Don't look at it! Don't look at it!" I hadn't said those words. Not into the radio, not ever. I stood there, holding the receiver like it might burn me, heart hammering in my ears. The voice stopped abruptly, just cut out. And then the woods were silent again. But the air felt different, closer. I turned. Just once. Not all the way. Just a glance. Peripheral. And that's when I saw it. Not a figure, not clearly. Just a shape. Tall. Bone thin. The suggestion of limbs where none should be, half wrapped in the trees, too still to be wind, too slow to be anything alive. I looked away. I didn't run. I just walked. Kept my eyes low. Every part of me was screaming, but I didn't run. Whatever it was, I knew it wanted me to run. I don't remember how long I walked after that. Hours, maybe. The sun barely moved. Or maybe I wasn't seeing it right. Everything blurred, like I was moving through a place that didn't fully want me there, or didn't care if I ever left. Eventually, I heard an engine, a low hum echoing through the trees. That's when I ran, stumbled through the brush until I hit gravel, a service road, a supply truck coming down slow, like it wasn't expecting anyone to be there. They stopped when they saw me. I must have looked wrecked. Clothes torn, face pale, backpack half open. The driver leaned out and said they'd just finished a supply run to the lookout towers, asked what the hell I was doing down there. I told him I'd gotten turned around near Trail 12. His expression changed. Not scared, just tired. Back at the station, they told me I'd been gone nearly 3 days. Said I'd checked in each night by radio, gave clear coordinates, logged trail data. My entries were in the book, right handwriting, right signature, but I didn't remember doing any of that. I hadn't eaten, hadn't slept. My fingernails were dirty like I'd been digging. My boots were worn down like I'd walked twice the distance. I didn't ask questions. I packed my gear and left the next morning. Never even filed the report. The dispatcher from that call never answered her line again. When I asked about her, they just said someone else had taken over comms. Didn't give a name. Didn't ask what I'd seen. I've never gone back out there. Not even close to that side of the district. Sometimes I still hear the voice from the radio. Not in dreams, just in the quiet, when the house settles or the wind runs low through the gutters. Always the same phrase, always in my voice. Don't look at it. I don't know what was out there. I don't want to. But if you're listening to this, if you're one of the night drivers, the hikers, the fire crews tuning in to 7:31 a.m. out in the dark, stay off Trail 12. If the trees go quiet, if the trail seems longer than it should, don't look at it. They called it a training rotation. 2 weeks up in Tower 4, covering the southern ridge while the regular guy took medical leave. But that's not what happened. I found out later he didn't request leave, he just left. No warning, no report. Drove down the access road in the middle of the night and never came back for his gear. His name's not on any logbook anymore. Like the system erased him. Like the tower wanted someone new. I don't talk about this with anyone. I tried once, to a supervisor, and he gave me that blank stare people use when they want you to shut up without saying it. So I'm putting this here, on 7:31 a.m., because I've heard stories on this station that feel close to mine. Not the same, but close enough. It's a quiet post, 9,000 feet up, single-lane road, 2-hour drive from the nearest fire crew station. The tower's not big, just a narrow stairwell, metal-walled kitchen, twin bed, windows all around. You can see for miles on a clear day, tree canopy stretching in every direction, mountains folding into themselves. I actually liked it at first. The silence, the height, the solitude. A radio check every 6 hours, weather reports twice a day, and the rest of the time you're just watching. The first few nights were normal. Wind in the treetops, the occasional creak of the tower settling. One night I heard a coyote down near the switchback. Another, a low grumble that could have been thunder behind the western ridge. Nothing unusual. I logged it all, kept my head down. Tried to treat it like a job and not a story I'd tell later, but on night 5, something changed. I was brushing my teeth by the sink when I heard it. A light metallic scrape. Not constant, just once. Slow. Like someone dragging a hand across the outer railing. I froze, moved to the window, looked down. Nothing. I waited. The sound didn't come again. I chalked it up to wind, maybe a loose bolt shifting under pressure. Metal expands, contracts. That's what I told myself. I went to bed, but the next morning I found a single black feather on the landing. Not a bird nearby. No wind damage. Just one feather. Placed. It wasn't there the night before. After the feather, I started paying closer attention. I'd do a full sweep of the stairwell every morning, walk the perimeter with my flashlight at night, even though I knew no one should be up there. The access road had a locked gate. You couldn't reach the tower without hiking 6 miles uphill, and there were no boot prints, no tire marks, no signs of anyone else. Still, something felt different. Not wrong exactly, just watchful. Like the tower had stopped being mine. On night 7, I woke up to the sound of footsteps on the metal stairs. Not fast, not loud, one at a time, slow, careful, deliberate. It wasn't wind, it wasn't an animal, it was weight, shifting, testing each step. I stayed completely still, didn't move, didn't even breathe loud. The steps stopped just below the platform. I waited for a knock, a voice, something. But there was nothing. No one ever came up. After a long minute, I forced myself to look out the side window. The stairs were empty, just darkness below and the trees swaying gently in the wind like nothing had happened. The next morning I found the trapdoor at the base unlocked. I lock it every night. It's the first thing they tell you to do on shift. Climb up, pull the hatch shut, throw the bolt. I never forget. But that morning, it was loose, open by half an inch. I stared at it for a long time before I touched it. No marks, no scratch, no animal signs, just open. Things got worse after that. The radio, which had been clean all week, started picking up faint transmissions between check-ins, but they weren't from dispatch, and they weren't in any format I recognized. One night, around 2:30 a.m., I heard breathing on Channel 3, not static, breathing. Then a voice, soft, off-pitch. It said, "Firewatch, Firewatch, I see you." I didn't respond. I turned the volume all the way down and sat on the floor with my back against the far wall until the sun came up. I didn't sleep. By day 10, I started seeing small animal bones around the tower's base, laid out in circles, birds, squirrels. Something had stripped them clean, arranged them. No drag marks, no blood trails, just bones. Placed carefully like they meant something. That was when I found the tooth. It was under my bed. Small, human, yellowed at the edges. I held it in my palm and sat there for maybe 15 minutes, trying to explain it away. A leftover from the last guy, maybe. But I knew better. The rotation before mine wasn't a transfer. It was an escape. The wind picked up on night 11. Not a storm, just that kind of steady, high-altitude gust that hums against the windows and makes you feel like you're floating too high above something you were never meant to see. I didn't sleep. I sat at the small table near the western window, drinking lukewarm coffee, staring out into the trees, and listening. Around 3:12 a.m. I heard it again, the stairs. This time, it didn't stop at the platform. The steps came all the way up, slow, dragging slightly at the edges like something wasn't used to how its limbs should move on metal. Not heavy, not light. Wrong. I reached for the bolt on the inner hatch and turned it silently, locking it down. Then I cut the lights. Everything went dark except for the faint orange glow from the radio screen. I crouched by the side window, trying not to breathe too loud, not to shift my weight. The trapdoor handle moved once, just once. A twitch, then stillness. I waited. A long scraping sound came from the outside of the cabin, like fingers gliding across the outer metal frame, climbing, not walking. No footsteps now, just that slow friction of weight shifting upward from below, toward the windows. Then came the breathing. Not deep, not fast, just shallow and close, right outside the glass. I could feel it before I heard it, like condensation forming inside my own lungs. I didn't look. I didn't need to. Something was on the narrow ledge, on the outside of the observation deck, leaning in. That's when the radio turned itself on. No click, no signal, just sound. My voice warped and dragging, just like before. But this time, it said something different. "Let me in." Over and over, the same phrase, each repetition softer, more slurred, more desperate. "Let me in. Let me in. Let..." I pulled my knees to my chest and sat there until the sun rose. I never looked out the window, not once. When I finally moved, I opened the hatch with shaking hands and stepped onto the deck. The light made everything look normal. Clear sky, green canopy, the faint smell of pine. But on the glass beside the window were handprints. 3 fingers, long, smudged with something sticky, like sap and dirt, dragged down slowly like whatever was there had been trying to hold on. I left that afternoon. Didn't wait for the end of my rotation. Didn't pack half my gear. I radioed in a fake report. Said I'd been having chest pain, maybe altitude sickness. They told me to sit tight, that help would be sent the next morning. I said no. I said I was already on my way down. They didn't argue. When I reached the bottom of the access road, I didn't even look back at the tower. It felt wrong to give it that. Like it wanted to be acknowledged. Like it waited for that. I drove straight to the station, left my badge, handed in my logbook. I told them I wasn't cut out for high-altitude posts, that I'd seen signs of stress and maybe a predator in the area. They barely looked up, just nodded, marked my file, and offered to forward the rest of my things later. I didn't want them. A week later, I got a message from a ranger up north, casual tone. Said they'd assigned a new guy to Tower 4, a kid named Jacob, fresh out of school. Young, eager, the kind that brings binoculars on his days off. I asked how he was adjusting. There was a pause. Then the ranger said, "Haven't heard from him since his last check-in, but that tower gets weird weather. It'll scramble radios for days sometimes." He said it like it was nothing, like silence was normal up there. Since then I've moved, changed jobs, stayed close to sea level. I live in a place with no trees for miles. Flat, open land. But even here, sometimes late at night, I wake up and feel that same pressure in the air, that stillness, that feeling like I'm being watched from below. Sometimes I catch my own voice on the baby monitor, soft, clipped. It says things I didn't say. I sent this to 7:31 a.m. because I know you won't laugh, because some of you already know what I'm talking about. You've felt it too. If you ever get assigned to Firewatch, and they tell you it's just temporary, ask what happened to the person before you, and if you hear your own voice coming through the radio, don't answer. Thanks for tuning in to 7:31 a.m. tonight. If you're new here, like and subscribe, and we'll catch you on the next signal.